Yeah, we're trying really hard. We've done a lot of learning and growing, and we're not perfect by any means yet. We're still learning. But like I said, I think having the right people around us. One of my good friends, she's a project manager from Stronghold Construction. Her name is Catherine, and I look up to her so much. But she has a saying that really resonated with me, and she said, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." Mm-hmm. So it's really about who you surround yourself with.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Building Scale, specifically the Building Connections series, where I get to meet interesting people and talk about whatever's on their mind generally. We usually track it back around to business, and in this case, an amazing person that I met through another guest. So shout out to Zach Simmons of Stronghold Construction, who introduced me to another Oklahoma construction company, WDS Contracting, with Jenny Williams. And very interesting conversation we had, very life-based, not necessarily just strictly business, of how her and her husband started this business. And, 20 years plus ago, you enter kids into this scenario, started as, that dirt earthwork company, now doing full-blown construction management, for both commercial, federal, and doing it in unique ways when it comes to how contracts are put together. So it was funny because when we first met, she said, "I don't know, the podcast thing, I'm not sure I have anything to say." And after we talked a little bit, I was like, "You have so many amazing stories about like the real deal entrepreneurship that you have to share. Please come on the show." And she agreed to, and the rest is history. Essentially, we dig deep into life, not just how business needs to be ran, but how life is impacted that way, mindset, and how that goes into this. So it was really just a great episode to connect with Jenny, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And again, shout out to Zach for the introduction. And here's our conversation. So Jenny, it's a family business, you and your husband. How did this all start? Where's the beginning origin of all of this?
Well, it definitely wasn't very impressive. We had very humble beginnings. We started off really small, just mainly doing just me and him, and we were just doing mainly small scale residential work, like ponds, house pads, things like that. We are in our 20th year now, so
congratulations. That's huge.
There's been some growth since then. But yeah, we started off really small and then grew into doing commercial work. And then from there, transitioned into federal work. We got our DBE certifications. And then recently we've transitioned into doing construction management using alternative delivery methods. And we've had a lot of success with that. So it's been a wild ride for sure.
That's awesome. That's massive growth from little tiny humble beginnings, as you say, all the way through, hey, I'm doing work for the government now, which is not to say that like that's always the landing spot, the promised land or anything like that, but that's way bigger than in doing somebody's home. So
right.
Let's walk through some of that. How do you go from doing a small job to then eventually getting to doing not even your trade anymore, now construction management at a federal government level?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, honestly, I would try to put my finger on one thing that, brought us there, but it's just been a mixture of different things and kind of different opportunities that presented themselves at different times, some that we weren't even expecting or looking for. And it was just like, I'm not sure if we can do that. Okay, let's give it a shot. And then it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to us. And when I say that, I'm specifically talking about the CMGC delivery method. We had showed up to a pre-bid meeting, not really knowing what to expect. First, it was a bundle of 17 projects. We get in there, we're like, okay. And like we had talked earlier, with us being construction for 20 years, you kind of feel like the system's kind of broken. And when they started describing this method, we're like, wow, okay, this makes sense that you have, essentially early contractor involvement, where the builder is part of the team with the design and they're bringing the design along, and you've got, value engineering and innovations going into it, and you're building it as you go. Something that's really stood out for us in this process, we are consistently seeing 30% to 40% savings on cost, and then about 50% savings in time utilizing that method. So I would say that's probably been the biggest thing for our business. About 2 years ago, that's what changed the trajectory of our overall business and how we do things.
So dirt before, right? So that's
Yes.
the dirt life.
Yeah. Yeah. We had always been a sub previous to that, just an earthwork sub, and then moved into construction management for the civil side of things. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind. And, then on top of that, you add, you're married to your business partner. And so that's like a whole new layer you add into it. So not only are you, a business owner in a field that, is very, chaotic, but you're also in a trade that's probably the most expensive and the most risky. Throw in there, married to your business partner. So that presents itself with a lot of challenges. It's definitely, for me personally, it's changed my perspective on things a little bit, where you kind of have to learn to appreciate the positive in things and maybe try to, think outside the box a little bit. One of the stories I always like to tell people is, Matt and I, we started from nothing. And when we first got together, basically we lived in a single wide trailer house that was like a 1960 something tin can. And it had holes in the floor. It was very, we were broke. And then I got pregnant with our first son, which he's 18 today, by the way. Today's his 18th birthday.
Happy birthday. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like full circle, yeah. And when I got pregnant, I was like, oh man, we need to fix this up a little bit. So, we got a double wide trailer, then we moved it in there, which, after we moved that in there, we thought we were high rollers. You've got this nice new double wide trailer. And I don't know if you know much about Oklahoma dirt, but it's red. And so being in the dirt business, when Matt would come home with dirty boots every day, this trailer house, it already came with the carpet and curtains and the whole deal. And the carpet was white. And so every day, I'd be at home, taking care of babies, and he would walk in the door with muddy boots, and I'd get so mad. I'm like, how dare you? Don't you know that I've been here cleaning this house, cooking all day, taking care of these kids, and you're coming in here with these muddy boots? And it just really got under my skin. And then finally one day I just kind of sat down and I thought about it, and it was just like this epiphany hit me, like, you know what? These muddy boots represent that he is going to work every day, that we have work every day, that we are paying our bills, that he is coming home every day and he's not out at some bar, and so now when I see these dirt clods, it's like, okay, it's a reminder of all the things that have brought us where we're at. That, and I invested in a really good carpet shampooer. So, but yeah, that, things like that, you kind of just got to take it in stride, and maybe changing the perspective, I think, has a lot to do with being successful and having long-term viability in this business. And so that for us has worked really well.
That's that's a great reminder for everybody, because like you having lived through many homes with women that ran the home, I totally could see the, hey, I just cleaned the floors. I can hear this in my brain, but then to have the perspective of like, yes, I am muddy, I am dirty, I am full of earthwork as I come home from work. To be reminded, like, what does that mean though? Like, why is there the positive, which I love. So kudos to you for hitting that perspective and then having that shift.
It took me a minute to get there, and every once in a while I still need a good reminder, but it's definitely been a learning and growing process for sure, navigating family, kids, work, and then trying to do it all the right way, and you feel like you're not doing enough, or there's, the work-life balance, that's a myth, so, but yeah, it's definitely a process.
Yeah. So what are family dinners like when you are not only a family, but also business partners?
We talk about dirt a lot.
Yeah. A lot of dirt talk. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what makes our situation unique too, is with him being in the field side, me being in the office side, we're literally having sometimes there's a disconnect between those two sides, right? Well, we're literally having that dinner table conversation of, how the job's going, things that we can do better next time, ways that we can improve our production. And that way, when I bid the next project, I can keep that in account. And so it's just constantly shifting and evolving, based on those discussions that we're having at the dinner table with our family. And like I said, our son that just turned 18, he's actually an employee of ours too. He operates heavy equipment. So he's coming in there and, he's putting his 2 cents in and kind of bouncing that off of mom and dad. And what do y'all think about this? Or here's how I overcame this challenge. And hey, we hit some unsuitable soils, but we overcame. And so it's pretty neat to get to do that.
That's super. That's got to be amazing that, obviously you started the business before he was around, and now he's in the business, and now giving you input or advice in whatever way that comes. That's got to be quite the complete the circle feeling.
There's always something to talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. So CMGC. So you a few years ago you go to this thing and you don't know if you're going to be able to do the work or complete the projects. So let's give people a quick rundown of what that means, as well as where are the advantages. I mean, you obviously talked about like savings on the cost side as well as in the time side. Most business owners would be like, well, I like saving time and money. That's generally a good thing. So
that's fun, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think kind of what's been driving this shift in these alternative delivery methods is, like we talked about before, is the system's broken where, a lot of the way things have been done in Oklahoma, it's based on low bid, they're weighing price over qualifications. So with CMGC, it's qualification based. And basically we still have an independent cost estimator that makes sure that we are in line on our pricing so that we are not gouging, but it's more qualification based. And then for us, what we've done is, we self-perform the earthwork part of it. So we're able to manage materials in the field the most efficient way. We're able to look at a job site and say, hey, let's get with design or let's get with civil. And if we adjust these proposed grades a little bit, we can balance the site and save $250,000 on material and trucking. And we've done that several times actually here recently. So that's what we get enjoyment out of, is providing these solutions that, hey, it saves the owner money. It's win-win for the team. And then also what we've done is we've kind of built a roster of industry leaders based on the bundle of projects that we have. So like in Seminole right now, it's mainly like earthwork and paving. And so we partnered with Haskell Lemon, which is the #1 paving company in Oklahoma. And we're able to work with them hand in hand. And their chief estimator, she's amazing. She knows design. She's designed roads before. She's able to offer innovations on the design side. And then not only are we catching those savings on design, but then out in the field, we're continuing to innovate and saving the owner even more money out there while minimizing risk. And so we're addressing that in the very beginning stages of the project, whereas typically a project's designed, a year ahead of time, and then, we get it as the contractor or the builder, and we're like, ooh, okay, so this isn't going to work, this is going to work, and this isn't work, which equals change order. And a lot of times, those are budget busters. It'll shut down a project, or it costs the owner a lot of money that they didn't anticipate. And so now it's a lot more, you kind of have this environment where there's a lot of finger pointing. It's very combative whenever you try to come and say, well, hey, this wasn't accounted for in your plans. What do you want to do now? And it's just not a good situation. And so with CMGC, you're overcoming all of that. You're figuring all that out in the beginning stages so that when you do get to construction, you're saving money and saving time. And so we had one particular project for the Seminole Nation. It was called Econtexture Road. It had spent, I think, 7 years just kind of in limbo because it was over-engineered, over-designed, and over-budget. We then were presented, that was part of the 17 projects. That was our first one right out the gate. Haskell Lemon was able to come in there, provide some value engineering options. We spent about 45 days in design and then 15 days in construction and had it done for about $800,000 worth of savings versus traditional construction methods. So this is where we hope the industry is going, and why we're big fans of CMGC.
That's so wild. As I mentioned to you, not ever swinging a hammer, not ever having to do a CAD drawing or any of these things. I had this 4:30 a.m. walk with my dog, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago or something. And I was like, there has to be a better way that construction can operate. Like this is, I was going through this.
That's interesting. You saw it and you weren't even in the middle of construction. Like Correct. You're an outsider and you're seeing it. It's that obvious.
Oh yeah. I, obviously talking to tons of leaders in the space for building scale and like obviously seeing it from the IT and cyber side and helping those companies, but it was the business, like the structure of how the business was operating. right? And not one specifically, the industry across the board. It was just like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like it was very lots of things about construction don't make sense to me inherently. Like when me and Will talk to a leader and we're like, we just don't understand how like you're gonna do work, you're gonna cash flow all that work, all that labor, materials, and then like you're gonna wait hopefully 90 days, maybe 120 days long until you get paid on that thing. Just to us is insane. Like that's like that idea ever. Like how could you sustain and how could you grow? And unless you have giant deep pockets, it becomes very restrictive, especially for a smaller business to elevate and to get to the next level, to go from doing a house to then doing federal work. It takes a long time to be able to do that. And I feel like that changing how the industry operates would help that would speed up that process, in as well as all the innovation that I think is there to be had, but it's just, you're not incentivized to be more efficient or to, like, it's just like, hey, if I could just, not to suggest that this is what is absolutely happening, but if I can change order the hell out of something to make more money, like that is probably the route I go, compared to like, let me make this more efficient and get zero change orders and then make less money. But it's just like, again, it's like, it's a mindset shift. And so like, no, you can be so much more efficient that you save so much more money, and they love working with you because like an owner loves to save time and money. Like if you can be above or faster schedule and lower costs, it's like, well, that's a no brainer.
Yeah. So usually, I mean, I would say, so we've had zero change orders, and that is ultimately the goal, is to have no change orders, no surprises for anybody. You've already figured that out on the front end of it. So yeah, it's a much easier, much less combative process for sure.
Okay. So what are other things that so obviously you're saying like we need to be structurally different contractually. What are other things that you're doing that are more process driven, that are like, are either misses in the industry or things that you've just seen that like, this works really well for us? Like we found, man, like this is a sneaky trick that we've kind of uncovered.
Yeah. So I think kind of another aspect of that would be kind of, we've learned to really embrace technology with not only the field side, but the office side. And so it's not so much a sneaky trick, but it absolutely keeps you accountable, and it's digital data that cannot be questioned. It'll hold up in court. So, we've had instances where, a lot of times a dirt contractor will just go in there and say, hey, I moved X amount of dirt, write my check. How do you know? The owner, a lot of times an owner has no way to verify that, and so we go in, we have GPS on all of our equipment. It tells us exactly where we're at, how much dirt we need to move. And we also utilize AgTech software on the office side. And so what that does is it allows me to go in and compare surfaces proposed against existing. We then are able to provide our owner with a 3D model of what exactly their job site will look like. They can see all the cuts, the fills, they can see the dynamics of the job site. A lot of times we'll have an owner say, well, we just want to do phase 1 first. And well, phase 1 is a huge import job. But then we look at the overall site holistically, and it's like, well, phase 2 is an export site. So how about doing all the dirt work all at once? You don't have to build all your buildings all at once, but just do your dirt work all at once. Your site will balance and save you a ton of money, time, all that. And so AgTech's a huge part of that. They have a really neat site balancing tool too that will basically say, hey, if you can adjust your elevations by X amount, you can balance your site. And they also have it's a rock alert where you can put in your geotechnical data of where all your layers of rock are. So that's a huge change order in earthwork is, you go out there and, surprise, you hit rock. Well, now you have to excavate rock, which that's a huge cost. And so with AgTech, you can actually go in and make your strata layer of where that rock layer is. You can quantify it. And so again, that's something you can address on the front end versus it being a surprise on the back end and, causing problems.
Yeah, I find that, what's the saying, a measure twice, cut once
kind
of concept, where it's like if you just plan a little bit more, like if you just take that time to really dig into some details, you can be so much more efficient.
Right.
which then obviously creates the savings.
Mm-hmm.
So is usually something you don't find in construction companies, at least certainly not until they get to a very large size. And then they start saying like, we need an innovations team or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does technology help in regards to getting people to essentially come work for you, or labor, just labor in general, right? That's a huge issue. But if you are being more on the forefront of both contractually, hey, we're trying to do this different, which then has a full impact across everybody in the company, and we're trying to be more technology forward, like what does that then create for your people?
Right. And so I would say, number one, it helps recruit and attract potential employees. They like the nicer equipment. And so your equipment that has the GPS on it obviously is going to have a cab and all that, where sometimes you see this ancient, rust bucket out there. And so it attracts them right off the bat. They're like, wow, that's cool. And especially with the younger generation, they're kind of techie anyway. So they want to be able to, have a screen that shows them exactly where they are in relation to the job site and how deep their cut is and where they're at on that. And so for us, it's neat because you can take those plans, they're digitized, and then it's put into a 3D model into the machine that's then up on a screen, where your operator can then look at it and feel more confident that they are where they need to be. They're basically only having to do it once instead of having a bunch of rework. And so for us, you can do twice the work with half the crew.
That will, again, more efficient, right? It seems to keep coming back around to that. So then how do you find new recruits? What's the path for recruiting for y'all?
Yeah, so since we have 3 boys, it comes pretty naturally to try to, reach out to high schools and things like that to generate that interest. And, hey, have you ever looked at a career in construction? And so we have a lot of fun with that. We've gone to a lot of events where, there's heavy equipment simulators. We've got some organizations here that just travel around the different high schools, and they bring a heavy equipment simulator where there's a headset, a virtual reality headset, and they are, on the screen, you can see them. They're, moving dirt around or moving materials, and they love it, and they've never been exposed to it before. I heard a story. We went to a construction rodeo a couple weeks ago, and we were so appalled that some of these poor kids had never even been on a construction site or knew anything about equipment or had any idea what that entailed. And there was a little boy that was asking, well, hey, do you think you might want to have a career in construction? His answer was, well, yeah, but I don't want to hold a flag in the middle of the road. That's all we thought it was. And so we're like, no, okay, yeah. And so I think just kind of getting exposure out in our communities with the high schools, that's something we're big fans of. Like I said, with us having 3 boys and one of them that actually works for us, he's able to actually go and speak to these kids. He spoke to about 200 of them at that construction rodeo. And, they can relate to him because he's their age. He looks like them. He talks like them. And so he was able to relate to them in a way that we couldn't. And so just to see their eyes light up that, when they got to jump in a backhoe or got to go form some concrete or got to learn about how electrical lines work and things like that, it was pretty neat. And so I think there needs to be a bigger push on that. I wish more companies would get on board with trying to recruit the younger generation, because I feel like I think we've talked about it before, there's a gap right now. There's a hiring gap because you've got the older generation retiring, but the younger generation is not coming in as quick as what the older generation is leaving. So, we definitely try to push that as much as we can.
So, to be clear, holding a sign on the highway in that scenario, those kids are seeing that they're being short-sighted, because you can make a great living holding a sign. So to be clear about that fact,
nothing
young
wrong
children.
with sign holders. Nothing,
for sure.
Sign holders, yeah.
But yeah, to your point, there's so many other aspects of construction. Like that's like there's back office, there's project management stuff, there's design components, there's engineering. Like there's so much stuff that's in the space. Mm-hmm. But one question that I have, because I'll say I'm common folk. What's a construction rodeo? What is this amazing thing?
Yeah, so it was super fun. So it was actually put on by an organization called Construct My Future. and they're a nonprofit that basically engages with kids to try to get them, exposed to a possible career in construction. Because, when we were growing up, it was always, you had to go to college, you had to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the trades almost kind of got put on the back burner. And so it's like, not a whole lot of kids know about it. They don't know that, hey, nothing wrong with college, but you don't have to go to college to make a good living, and you could jump right in and start doing it today. And so that basically they started off with interviews. They had all these kids from all different schools, country schools, inner city schools, come in. They ask us questions about, what do you do? What is your company about? And so we got to talk about that. And they asked questions about, how would they get into construction? And so we talked about that a little bit. And then the second half of the day, everybody went outside, and there was some equipment dealers that brought out, excavators, loaders, trackhoes, backhoes, dozers, had them all lined out up there. And then they even had games set up where, like, there was bowling balls set up on these poles, and the goal was to take the bucket of the excavator, get the bowling ball off the pole, and then dump it into the bucket next to it.
Wow.
And then, all these kids are super competitive, so now it's a game, right? And so they would do that. Well, then if you could get the bowling ball, then they switched it over to a tennis ball. So then it got tricky, right? So that was fun to watch. And they had guys out there forming concrete. So the kids got to see how all that worked. And they had some linemen out there showing them, how the electrical lines work. Just all different aspects of construction that you normally wouldn't see up front and personal and get to be hands-on with. That's what they got to do.
Well, that's it sounds fun. I want to come to a construction rodeo now.
You got to come to the next one for sure.
It'll be me and a bunch of children. It'll be fine. It'll be totally fine. So going to events like that is a good way to recruit the young. How do you then train the young to be able to actually do the job, right? Because this is, it's not that we don't have enough human beings, right? Like that's not the thing. And as you get more young people into the trades, this will help our labor problem over time. But today, if I needed a job done, it requires somebody with experience, right? I have to have some concept of what we're doing.
Right.
So what's the struggle there, and how do you
and that's tough, right? Because a lot of the people that we hire, so this is kind of ironic, but we've actually learned that it's almost better to hire somebody with no experience versus somebody who is been there, done that, and doesn't want to learn a new way to do things, especially with the technology on the equipment. It seems like it's really hard to grasp. And so we've kind of learned that bringing somebody in who has basically no experience and can learn it that way. And really it's all about their work ethic, right?
Yeah. We
can train skill all day long, but if you don't have the work ethic, it does you no good. And so we always say, are you coachable? Are you trainable? Are you willing to show up to work for every day? If you can check those boxes, you're hired. We can train the rest. And so, one of our best operators 2 years ago, he was a mailman. And he's just caught on real quick, and he's made a really good hand. So for us, it's just having the willing attitude is 90% of it, and we can train the rest.
All right. That's fair. What about on the CM side? So obviously, as you're doing this, I'm guessing that you're not doing this to where it's like, I need to have multiple, I don't know, you don't call them, it wouldn't be a project manager, maybe a project manager. I don't know. I guess let's explain the structure of how you go from doing this specialty trade to then doing construction management.
Yeah, so that was definitely a learning experience too. And so it was something we had always seen from the other side, right? Being a sub. And so we kind of always knew, like, the good project managers, how they kind of worked, and maybe some of the not so good ones, things that we didn't want to repeat. And so I think seeing it from the other side kind of helped us transition. And then again, just surrounding ourselves with the right people that could really help us support, learn and grow in that position where, and again, my project manager that I have right now, she had no experience coming to us, but she 100% had the right mindset where she was just like, she jumped right in. She was like, I can help do whatever. I never heard, that's not my job, or I don't know how to do that. She would say, I maybe don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out. She was a hairdresser before she came to us. So like another, you wouldn't really think would lead to construction, but she's amazing at it. So, but yeah, it's definitely, I think mindset plays such a big part in it. And then, like I said, the skill part can come later.
That's super intriguing. Kids, male, men, and hairdressers. That's the secret.
Yep.
We're not tapping into those enough.
Right.
That's awesome. You mentioned the mindset shift, obviously, with the model, how you're attacking jobs or how you're looking at jobs, because that's not the common, right? Like, because we're still living in the reality that lots of jobs get low bid, right? Like, or even like a design bid build, right? Or something, like there's other models that are out there that are more dominant than a CMGC. How do you balance taking work, right? Obviously that's where you want to go. This is the vision that you believe.
Do both. Yeah, we 100%. Like, there's a side of WDS that does the construction management and CMGC and progressive design build. And then there's another side of WDS that we still do. We're still just the earthwork sub. But I think where it's benefited us is we take the mindset from the CMGC progressive design build and we apply it to where we're a sub, and we try to, still bring those things to the table. Yes, we're still a little bit later to the game, but if we can present those ideas or those options to that owner or that general contractor, I think they look at us then more as a trusted partner because they know we're looking out for them. Yeah. And so they're happy with us and they'll continue to use us for their next job.
For sure. So you mentioned building a roster, essentially, of partners, of like who other people that are also in like-minded. How do you do that? How do you find other partners that not only they're thinking the same way, but you also have a level of trust with them, right? Because it's like, there's a lot of competition that exists, right, in the world, which is good because it pushes us forward. But I think there's a level of that also can stunt our growth, right? It's just like when you actually collaborate and cooperate together, you can build things that you didn't think you could build. Like, it's just like there's more advantage to sharing knowledge, in my opinion.
Right.
So how do you find great partners like that you can add to the roster?
Right. So I think a lot of that came from just being in the industry for so long. You kind of see the good, the bad, and the ugly. You see the companies that have, staying power, that have, done the right thing when nobody was looking, or you heard stories that, this other company did it the wrong way. So you're like, okay, we're not going to call them. And then, just kind of having those relationships prior to jumping into this, I think is what really helped us. And then kind of knowing that they would be a good partner. And then I think, as soon as, like with the CMGC, as soon as they heard, this new method, they had kind of experienced the same thing we did, that, it was kind of a broken system that was outdated. With low bid. And so they immediately latched on, and so like I mentioned before, Haskell Lemon was a big one. The Stronghold Construction was another big one. They immediately had the same mindset of, hey, we can do things better. We can better our industry by doing it this way, because it's win-win for everybody now. Because if owners keep having bad experiences in construction, they don't want to do it anymore, right? And so if we can give them a good experience, they save money, they save time, that helps us all and keeps us busy then.
Yep. So. No, totally. You mentioned getting recognized DBE. How has that impacted the business?
So I think that's opened some doors too. So there's not a whole lot of woman minority owned earthwork contractors.
Yeah. All right. Very specific. Yeah. In Oklahoma.
I can't think of any in Oklahoma. So there's definitely some incentives there with federal work. There's a percentage of set aside there. I will say that I'm glad that the application process has gotten a lot more stringent, because I think a lot of people were taking advantage of that, where, there would be a husband-wife team, and maybe they wanted to get those advantages, but the wife has no idea of the day-to-day structure or operations of the business. And so they just put her on paper as owner. And then, that's not helping anybody. And so I know for me personally, the process was very intense, very stringent. It was about a year-long deal, but I'm glad it was that way because they're weeding out all the bad players.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So the federal work that you're doing, obviously you're getting to be able to bid on this, or in this case, you're getting to go through this process to get those projects. What are other areas of growth that you're seeing for the company?
So I would say probably that we want to keep going with the alternative delivery methods. And then another one would probably be get more into the transportation side of things.
Okay.
We're trying to dip our toe in ODOT work and things like that. We haven't yet explored that. But that's definitely something on our radar. We'd like to try to get involved there. And then also we like doing the dirt work still too. So I don't think we'll ever get away from that, but I can't ever imagine us not doing that. So, but yeah, I would say probably just continuing on with what we've got going on right now.
Got it. All right. That makes total sense. This has been a lot of fun. I love people that are trying to move the industry forward, right? That's essentially at the end of the day is what you're saying. Like, there's just a better way to do things, and maybe we should just think about that more globally. And like you are doing, building a roster around that concept to be able to say, if you get a bunch of like-minded people together, that's how you get power, right? So they say, like, how do you go from good to great? Well, you bring people with you. Like that's how you do it, right? You have to do it together, which is awesome to hear that that's effectively what you're doing.
Yeah, we're trying really hard. We've done a lot of learning and growing, and we're not perfect by any means yet. We're still learning. But like I said, I think having the right people around us. One of my good friends, she's a project manager from Stronghold Construction. Her name is Catherine, and I look up to her so much. But she has a saying that really resonated with me, and she said, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." So it's, really about who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, you are the 5 people you're closest to concept.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's why I try to talk to as many amazing people as possible to find the best ones. So and you're definitely on that list of awesome people. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners or share or thought or a plug, whatever's kind of going on?
Yeah, I would just say I definitely am here to help. If anyone has any questions about what we're doing, how we're doing it, I'm pretty much an open book. So they're free to go to my website, call me, anything like that. We're always happy to meet new people and kind of expand our network. And so, yeah, we're excited to be here, and we want to help support others around us.
Awesome. I will throw all the links into the show notes, but if somebody's just listening, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So probably my email would be Jenny, Jenny, at WDSteams.com, or you can go to my website. All the information's on there at WDScontracting.com.
Awesome. This has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to future conversations. And I'm going to get you out here to Phoenix when we have another event, especially if we talk new delivery methods. I think that would be a fun just day or a couple days of it.
Yeah.
So listeners, this has been a ton of fun for me. Jenny's smiling, so that's always a good thing. And until next time, adios.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
keep building scale.
Scale.